Hey everyone! Welcome to Booga Buggie Kid Stories. In today's episode, Booga Buggie decides to take up construction work and builds a school for two of Elon's uncles. Alright, let's get started. One afternoon, Booga Buggie was in his sandbox, working really hard to build the biggest sandcastle that he'd ever seen. He was there with his construction trucks, his shovel and his pail. Whew, this was hard work. He sat back and looked at that sandcastle and decided that he was the best sandcastle builder that he knew. So he had an idea. If I can build a sandcastle pretty good, I bet you I can build other things pretty good. So he started on his plan. Last summer, he had set up a lemonade stand and was pretty successful at that. He had quite a few people stop by to pick up some lemonade. So he knew what to do. He built a little stand, and instead of a lemonade stand, he built a construction stand. And instead of lemonade for 25 cents, he made a sign that said, "I can build whatever you want for 25 cents. He set up his chair, put up the sign, and sat back to wait for the business to roll in. Now, Booga Buggie had only been waiting for a few minutes before his first customers pulled right up to his construction stand. And guess who it was? It was Elon's Uncle Keith and Elon's Uncle Ken. They were both teachers, and when they saw the construction sign that they could get whatever they wanted built for only 25 cents, they looked at each other and said, "We should get Booga Buggie to build us a brand new school." So they had pulled over, and they were walking up to Booga Buggie. Uncle Keith introduced himself to Booga Buggie and said, "Hey, Booga Buggie, we need you to build us a brand new school. Can you do that?" Booga Buggie thought for a second. He wasn't quite sure what a school was, since he was a bug and he'd never gone to school. But he looked back at his sandcastle and his sandbox and still thought it was pretty cool. So he looked back at Uncle Keith and Uncle Ken and said, "Sure, yeah, I can build you a school, no problem." Perfect, thought Uncle Keith and Uncle Ken. So they paid Booga Buggie his 25 cents. Booga Buggie told them to come back in 3 days to have their new school. So Uncle Keith and Uncle Ken hopped back in their car and drove away. Booga Buggie grabbed the 25 cents, and then he began to think, how am I going to build this school? And what is a school? So he grabbed his phone, and he called his friends, Gurga and Furga, to help come over and build the school with him. Booga Buggie's friends, Gurga and Furga, came over. They were twins. And it's a good thing that their parents were construction workers too. So they had brought backhoes, excavators, bulldozers, and steamrollers. And they were ready to get started on building this thing. But they weren't humans either, and they also didn't know what a school was. So Booga Buggie was thinking. He got out a piece of paper and a pen and started drawing the best school that he could think of. Well, after Booga Buggie drew the plans, Gurga, Furga, and Booga Buggie got to work. Whew, that was hard work. And after 3 long days of building the school, Uncle Keith and Uncle Ken drove back up to see it. But when they looked at it, their jaws dropped. They stared at it. Then they looked at Booga Buggie and said, "Booga Buggie, that's not a school, that's a fire station." Booga Buggie looked back at them. It's like, oh, right, sure, yeah, I know that's not a school. That was just a joke. Come back in 3 more days and we'll build your school for you. Uncle Ken and Uncle Keith looked at each other, sighed a little bit, and they knew there was still time before the new school year started. So they drove off, and they were eagerly waiting what would happen in 3 days from now. Meanwhile, Booga Buggie wasn't panicking too much. He just got out another piece of paper, drew another really great plan for his school, and him, Gurga, and Ferga got right back to work for the next 3 days. Whew, they were pretty tired again after 3 days. And they were excited for Uncle Keith and Uncle Ken to come over. And they saw their car driving up. They saw them get out. And they saw their jaws drop again. This time Uncle Ken said, "Booga Buggie, that's not a school. That's a library. I mean, there are libraries in school sometimes, but where are all the classrooms? How are we going to teach all the kids?" Booga Buggie looked back at Ferga and Gurga, and then he looked back at Uncle Keith and Uncle Ken and said, "Okay, well, how about this? Come back in 2 days, and this time we'll build you your school." So Uncle Ken and Uncle Keith drove off. They were a little bit nervous, but they trusted Booga Buggie because he was pretty good at building things. Maybe it wasn't the right thing, but what he did build was pretty good. So Booga Buggie, Ferga, and Gurga, they all got out their pens and papers. They still didn't know what a school was, but they drew as best as they could all the great things that they thought a school should be. So finally they were done drawing, and they really liked what they drew. So they got back to work, building the foundation, building the walls, painting. They were almost done. One more day to go. Whew, okay. Last day. They were finished. They sat there admiring their great work. Uncle Ken and Uncle Keith were driving up and parked and got out of their car. They couldn't believe their eyes. They weren't quite sure if they should be super confused, really excited, or somewhere in between. So Uncle Ken and Uncle Keith walked up to Booga Buggie and said, "Thanks. It kind of looks like a school." And Booga Buggie was so excited. He's like, "Let me show you around." So Booga Buggie led Uncle Keith and Uncle Ken on a tour of the whole school. First, as soon as you got into the lobby, you'd hop onto a roller coaster, which would take you directly to each classroom. Uncle Keith almost puked while trying to get to the classroom because the roller coaster was so fast and crazy. So after they toured the roller coaster, they stopped at the gym. But instead of a regular gym, half of the gym was an Olympic-sized swimming pool with 3 water slides flowing into it, and the other half was an ice rink that was meant for hockey games and kids' birthday parties. Uncle Ken looked around and thought, this could be kind of fun. And as they stopped and looked at the different classrooms, they realized that each classroom was a different bouncy castle with no desks, just room to bounce around. They almost finished their tour, and then they stopped at the last part, which was the cafeteria. But it wasn't your regular cafeteria, it was actually a candy shop. All sorts of candy, every kind of candy you could imagine was in the school. So they finished the tour, and Uncle Ken and Uncle Keith were still unsure what to think. It was pretty awesome. If they were kids, they'd want to go there. So, with only a few days left until school would start that year, they decided, yep, I guess this will have to do. So when school started, there was a huge lineup of kids. All of the kids in the entire city wanted to go to this new great school that they've been hearing all about, with candy for lunches, roller coasters taking you to classrooms, and bouncy castles as you read and learn. And when the kids saw it and started on their first day of school, every single one of them said, "This is the best school ever." So thanks to Booga Buggie, who had never even known what a school was, he had built the best school for all of the kids in the city. But by now, Booga Buggie, Ferga, and Gurga were so tired. They had built a fire station, they'd built a school with lots of crazy stuff in it, so they needed to rest. They all hunkered down back by the sandcastle, and they said, "You know what? I think for a while we'll stick to just building sand castles. All right, that's the end of today's episode. Thanks for listening. In today's episode, where Booga Buggie didn't know what a school was, but ended up building the best school that every kid has ever seen. Follow along for more Booga Buggie stories or rate us wherever you listen to your podcasts. Bye for now.